how have your industries changed in recent years, and especially since COVID?
What's interesting is since 2016, there has been a steady increase in advertising rates up to December 2019, and from March to June, there has been we experienced almost 80% fall in ad rates. That means if you're making $1, you're making 30 cents today. So that has actually affected a lot of digital content operators. Some of the media groups in Malaysia, they have actually closed shop, and that has been quite a ubiquitous thing that's happening in the industry. A lot of operators are actually folding up. But we've also seen that while there's one or two advertisers or advertising group that has cut the prices, there are also alternate operators in the market, and they're offering pretty good value for money or ad rates. So in that sense, yes, we've had a dip in the month of April, but May and June seems to be almost pre-COVID levels. So it's not too bad for the industry.
So Jin, do you agree with that, or are you seeing the same sort of things in your PR sphere?
Ever since COVID-19 kicked in, right, it's really difficult to do traditional media relations because we know that SPH has been shut down, and so has MediaCorp. Shut down in the sense that it's on a full lockdown. No strangers allowed unless you're working in SPH. And previously, where we could just pick up the phone and call a journalist to find out whether they are interested in picking up a certain story, now we can't. Right? We can just communicate through emails. I think that's something that SPH and MediaCorp, right, should consider. And if you are independent journalists, you should also consider other forms of communication, so that people can reach you just instead of just putting out your email. Because most of the time, we know journalists are so busy and then they don't reply to emails. With regards to the general industry, I think a lot of it has been moving to digital. What COVID has done is essentially accelerated the change from offline to online. Right? And things that are analog have become a lot more digital very, very quickly. Yeah.
Okay. So with this move to digital, right, I think more things are happening virtually. So the method of communication is probably different. Of course, they say at the end of the day, it's still about the message. But how you present it also makes a difference. So if you don't have that physical connection with people, the chance to actually see them face to face, and you have to do this via a computer, are there things you need to be mindful of?
Well, the first thing is that a lot of companies and a lot of people give lip service to digital. So are you digital? A lot of them will say that yes, but how digitally savvy a person is really depends. I used to work on Gillette, a P&G account, right? And P&G has been for the longest time relying on traditional media. Even the way that they gauge the success of every campaign, right, is based on GRPs. Now, if you know that GRPs is not actually real, the gross rating points is really based on the reach, but actually how many people are watching the TV program or reading the ads that you place in print, right? You don't know. But with digital, you can actually, the real-time reach, the real-time engagement. And it's really worrying when some of my clients, my existing clients, right, tell us that they are digital. And when we ask them, year on year, how much do you invest in digital? And they will tell you single-digit growth. In fact, one of our clients was saying that, within the next 2 years, their target is to move their sales, right, the e-commerce, hopefully within 2 years, right, they'll be able to get 25% in terms of online sales, which means that they are not even 25% yet.
Yeah.
If you've gone out during this period, you would have noticed that most of the shops, the brick and mortar shops, a lot of them are shuttered. And even after the lifting of phase 2, and even when we are going into phase 3, right, a lot of them will not be reopening. Sales will move online into e-commerce and all that. So if any of the organizations who are involved in sales are not at least between nearly 50% online now, you can be sure that they won't be able to survive this crisis.
Actually, we've seen a lot more people visiting our website. We are doing close to, so independent organically, we're doing about 6 million page views. And through MSN, Microsoft Networks, we're doing another 10 million. On Facebook, we're doing close to about 2 million hits. So that's about 17 million. And if you compare that and benchmark it against CNA website, for example, I think they're doing close to about 15 million. And there was a spike for them in the recent months because people were staying at home and they're watching a lot more stuff on Toggle and stuff. But we are a much smaller operator, and that's close to about 30% of what they are doing. So in that sense, we're quite confident that this digital model is there to stay. But I'd like to just add one more thing. Recently I had a conversation with an events management company, and that guy was telling me that he used to run events at Singapore Expo and Suntec City, and they were the first to shut down. Meaning, because of COVID and all the restrictions imposed on him, he had to close shop. First, he temporarily laid off his staff. Now he's completely shutting them down. And there's no recovery in sight for them. We are looking at probably a 4-year period before things recover for the MICE industry. And what does that mean, right? So some of these guys who are displaced, workers who are displaced, they're going to be retrained, and according to the government, they're going to be put in other sectors. So we're not just losing, and not just entire industries are being decimated. We also going to see huge transition, structural changes where talent is going to bleed out and go to other sectors. And in 4 years, when we recover, when the economy recovers, we're going to have trouble hiring the good staff. So that's a problem, and that's something that we are very aware and cognizant of.
Sorry, yeah, go on.
Yeah, so the other thing about going on to webinar, right? So you've been having a seminar, and then you're moving on to a webinar. Most of us haven't figured out how to monetize the content, like this webinar, for example. If it's a physical event, you have a ticket price, whatever the price is, you're able to charge for the event. But for a webinar, most event operators, we are still feeling our way, as to how to monetize this, how to make money, how to get sponsors on board. And that's going to be the challenge for a lot of operators these days.
Who has communicated well in this period, do you think, especially given COVID and stuff like that? Are there any sort of examples of people who have done it well and convincingly and correctly?
I think there are a lot of leaders of organizations who are still, like Kumaran said, right, they're still feeling their way around, especially the ones who have been dealing with traditional forms of communication. They have been put to the test because there have been a lot of layoffs. And the last thing that you want to do during this layoff, right, is to send an email to tell people that, hey, sorry, you have been retrenched due to the failing economy, blah, 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 blah. There are quite a lot of case studies out there of leaders, right, who have had to lay off their staff and have taken a very empathetic stance or a very empathetic approach to it. Organizing a town hall, coming up with a video, and then after that talking to people separately one-on-one. The more traditional leaders will find an excuse. They say that oh, sorry, I can't meet you face to face, right? So I'm going to retrench you via email. The better ones who have won over the hearts and minds of the people that they are retrenching, right? They had no choice but to retrench. Have gone online and spoken to them in town halls, in in Zoom meetings like this, and explaining, why they had to do it. Surprisingly, right? One of the organizations that have done pretty well during this crisis is the government. MCI has done a fantastic job with regards to disseminating news in a timely fashion. Although I'm sure that there are some things that they want us to know, and they disseminate. There are other things that we want to know which has not been disseminated.
Well,
right?
yes.
Yeah. I can see Kumaran smiling there.
On the point of the government, the 6 ministerial sessions where they were trying to talk to us, what are your thoughts on those? Were they effective? Did they help in any way?
In terms of placating fears, telling people that, okay, there are plans and all that, yes, but they could also have done it better by telling people earlier when those videos, those live streaming videos are going to come out, because we didn't know until that day itself.
They kind of sprung on us, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Kumaran, I'm sure you've got a view on that.
Who watches?
Yeah. I really do, right? So the government is holding all the marbles as far as communications is concerned, right? They state-owned, state-run media, Straits Times, the media, SPH groups, and so on. In fact, since 2011, they have actually crept up on a lot of other operators in terms of Facebook presence and social media presence. So it's quite obvious that they've got the money and to spend, and also the channels for them to disseminate information. Coming back to the ministerial speeches, right? The government is facing an uphill task. What has really happened is quite unprecedented, right? All the way from the handling of the crisis and the whole dormitory issues really crept up on them. So, I don't want to get into political speak right now, so I'll just leave it at that. So.
Okay. So, when you have so much of information and similar information coming out, do you think in terms of communication, that sort of repetition helps, or does it annoy, or does it become a blind spot the more you hear it?
So typically people have to hear it 7 times before it gets registered up there. So I think 6 is, and then the 7th
One shot, coming. One more.
So it's coming, akan datang.
I mean, Jin, for you in the corporate arena, it's slightly different, I'm sure. But how do leaders now communicate? How can they communicate better?
It's not, well, to put it really bluntly, right? It's not how many times you communicate, right? It's whether your message, whatever you're saying, resonates with your audience. I'm sure if it resonates with your audience, then it's like a drama series, right? If just to use an analogy, if a drama series is compelling and it's interesting for you to watch, then you'll probably follow the drama series. However, if you're not interested in it, right, then you'll probably switch to another channel. And when the advertising comes, right, you might even watch the advertising. So it's really important that leaders of organizations think of the kind of messaging that they are trying to communicate. What is the purpose of your organization? If you're thinking that your purpose of the organization is to grow big and make a lot of money, right, then I'm sorry, you have already lost your target audience there. If it's going to be changing lives for the better, or anti-establishment, or going against the grain, it has to resonate, and you have to find out what part of the target audience you want to win over, and then communicate a message over and over again. That would help. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in this unusual situation, elections on July the 10th, and social distancing and so on and so forth, a lot of it is going to take place in the virtual space, right? Does that play to the advantage of the younger generation who are more in tune with their devices and are happier to communicate that way? And does it disadvantage the older generation who are probably more used to going out to a rally?
Yeah, so we've actually discussed this quite in depth with the various comms person within the party and other parties as well. One of the things that's lacking is, of course, the physical rallies, right? It has been one of our main marquee events for the elections. And this year it will be very different. So a lot of opposition parties, I think, and the ruling party, I suppose, are looking at doing online rallies. And what the elections department has said is that they will allow the national broadcaster 3 minutes per candidate, or 12 minutes for a GRC or 15 minutes for a GRC, and allow both sides to air their campaign messages. So that's in play. And then they've got Facebook pages, we've got YouTube. So you see a lot of messages being pushed out to the various audience. You're right in terms of the digital spread, right? The younger generation, actually all those below 50 are on Facebook. And then if you go any younger, they're probably on TikTok or Instagram or something. But some of our housing estates, we have very mature demographics. And in order to reach them, you need to touch them. You need to go down and talk to them, distribute flyers and even mailers and etc. So in that sense, it's going to be a wide berth of activities that we need to do. And in the absence of rallies, it's a lot more hard work in terms of pounding the ground and meeting the people. Can't just rely on digital audience and channels.
So you reckon you'll be doing a lot more than in a normal election period this time around? Okay. So how will the physical aspects of it, you still can meet smaller groups of people, so you'll have to be a lot more judicious about how you put those sort of groupings together.
So it's a bit tricky. You got to put on a mask, and it's strange, right? You're asking someone to vote, and then you're putting on a mask. It's something that we have to figure out. And so you got to use a flyer and say, "Hey, that's me, the man behind the mask."
Why don't you customize your mask so the bottom half of your face is printed on it?
Yeah, that's a suggestion. So, well, there's a lot of logistics involved in that. But the hardest part is the social distancing officers, any officers on the prowl, and you need to look out for them and to ensure that you stick to a group of 5. There's a bit of uncertainty whether group of 5 party members, and what if you come in contact with a family during a door-to-door visit? Does that expand to 6 or 7? So there are a lot of uncertainties around that. But I think what most of them are doing is to make sure that at any point in time, there are only 5 individuals in a group setting. So these are things, and you got to maintain your 1 meter social distancing. No handshakes. So you got to do this.
Knock elbows.
Kind of stuff. So,
Okay. I've got a question here. How to keep everyone up to speed and address concerns about a change in direction which may have to be taken? I mean, these days you never know, right?
First, as a communicator, you have to realize that, or rather you have to admit that you don't know everything. Right? Things are changing so fast. You need time to find out in order to give an educated reply. You don't want to come across as being very fickle. That's one thing. Or second, even worse, right? You don't want to put the person off by giving an answer that doesn't reply to the concerns. So my advice would be to be really honest and admit that you don't know everything. As soon as the information comes in, as soon as you are able to give a reply, do that, and do that really often. A lot of people think that during this period, right, work from home, you actually don't do as much work as when you were in office. That's not the case with us communicators. We actually have more work to do, and things are coming in really fast. So we try to reply to queries, concerns, and questions as soon as possible. If we don't have the information, then we put it off until we get the information, and then we reply. People are also a lot more forgiving because it's a clean slate. Nobody has gone through this before, right? It's probably one of the biggest crises worldwide. So based on the understanding of the audience, just be yourself, right? As you would be. Don't put on a fake mask. Don't try to distance. Be real. That's the best. Yeah.
This will be real. Okay, Kumaran, any thoughts on that?
I was just thinking, at the Independent, we were already working in a virtual environment even before COVID-19. So for us, there was no transition. It was like work as usual. The only problem was in meeting the newsmakers, right? So we had to quickly get everyone up to speed on using Zoom. We were using Skype previously, but hosting larger audiences, Zoom was a bit better. So and teach especially the older ones. Even the oldest journalist is 72 years old. So we had to teach him. He used to come to the office and then he will use Skype. But so we had to teach him how to do it, set it up on his own, and use Zoom and Skype from home. So that was a bit of a challenge. But he picked up very quickly. The other thing was actually reaching out to the newsmakers. And if you're going to do a recording, teaching them the basics of how to position a camera, having a proper lighting and stuff like that. So that was, I think, a bit of a steep learning curve for these guys.
Is it easy to get talent at this stage for both of you? Among the younger generation, what do they bring to your organizations, and can they fit and gel with the older group or a system that is already in place?
The younger generation definitely come in as already digital natives. So in this kind of climate where you can't have a face-to-face connection, I think they actually prefer not having a face-to-face connection because for us, right, I always tell my colleagues, the younger colleagues especially, why do you text when you can send an email? And why do you send an email when you pick up the phone? Why pick up the phone when you can meet face to face? But now being the new norm, you can't see each other face to face. They text all the time, and the closest to a face to face conversation is via Zoom. Yeah.
So, Kumaran, how about your side?
Yeah, so every year we run an internship program for students from NUS and NTU, and this year we had 60 applicants. We were just looking at getting 5 interns on board. So there was a huge demand for all these people wanting to come and learn how to report online. But interestingly, after in phase 1 and phase 2, especially in phase 2. We have deployed them for on-the-ground reporting, boots on the ground. So they are out there meeting people and getting the stories in. So it's a mix. I mean, we can't, like what they say, right? You can't fax and handshake. You can't Zoom a handshake. You still need to go down and meet people, even though there's no physical handshake. But sometimes you really need to go down, observe to get the story in. So it's a new world, but we're trying to operate within the confines of the new norm.
How would you like to make a difference, Jin?
We would like to make a difference by helping out the SMEs because the SMEs are the ones who are really suffering. And because they are more often than not legacy businesses from a long time ago, they have been surviving for the past, at least 20, 30 years. A lot of the operators, a lot of the leaders in this generation, right, are not really digital savvy. what we hope to do is to be able to bring them up to speed, introduce to them the tools that they can use, right, to reach out to their target audience. So that's the way that we hope to be able to contribute.
Okay, Kumaran?
Yeah, so someone asked me something similar in another town hall meeting. And this was my advice to them. If you're running a F&B outlet, and today you're getting most of your demand coming from Grab food and delivery services, so it's about time for you to rethink the business. Perhaps shut down the restaurant operations and move to a central kitchen, or where you don't need that much of table space. So that's one. For other businesses that are more cost conscious and they've already retrenched staff, they should be really looking at the region, for example, within ASEAN, and outsourcing may become an option for them. But at the same time, we also say that they have to look at tier one markets, and that is to look at either the Americas or Europe. And because you have the cost arbitrage, a lot of digital goods and services, they can make a pretty penny out of it. Those are things that we're kind of advising some of the smaller SMEs in Singapore. But my real concern is, there have been two data points. One is from SEMP that says that 200,000 workers have been displaced. Straits Times reported that there were only 100,000 staff that have been displaced. So there are two different data points. I don't know which is the real fact. But the government is offering jobs to 4,000 individuals by end of this month. So you have potentially about 196,000 or 96,000, whichever top number you're taking. And these people have to wait a year to be retrained and redeployed into other sectors. That is going to be problematic, right? So we hope that if they're going to be redeployed, it happens faster instead of waiting a year. Maybe it happens in 2 or 3 months. For which, what we're really looking at is some of the digital companies really step up, offer internship and apprenticeship programs. It may be wage points or salary points may be much lower, but that's the fastest way to train and get people into the industry. And I think these are kind of 3 takeaways for business owners. You're running a business, think about these things. If you're facing a crisis, cut loss, move on, or look at regionalizing your business, or look at offering apprenticeship programs. So these are 3 takeaways for them.
Okay. There was a question that just came in, which I thought we should try and tackle as well. It's about fake news. How do we navigate that whole fake news space, and how do you avoid the problem of misrepresentation when people think that you've put out some fake news when you may not have?
Okay. So I actually submitted a paper to the select committee a year or 2 years ago. The problem with fake news is, and as a news organization, I find it problematic because it adds a layer of cost because we need to verify information. So that's the problem, right? When you get a piece of information, or even if it's a meme, you have to really look at it. But I'm running a news organization and I've got the resources to do it. Individuals are at risk because you really don't have the time or resource or the inclination to go and check on every little thing that comes into your WhatsApp. So that is a problem. But what my take on this is, the way POFMA is enacted in Singapore is not the way to go. Facebook and Google has community standards. They do their own vetting, and they actually, if you today put up a fake news or a fake post, they will ask you to do a takedown, or they'll give you a notification that it's factually wrong. So there are already tech giants addressing this issue. So there's really no reason for the government to come down so hard and name and shame individuals for putting up the wrong stuff. So maybe they can step back a bit and revisit the fake news laws.
Okay. Got another question. How for Jin, I think how challenging is it to build rapport with journalists you've not met before but have to work with, especially when you cannot have face-to-face meetings with them?
Wow. Okay. This is what we have told our clients. The businesses and organizations that we work with. If you have known, right, just this week, SPH has been taken off STI. So SPH is no longer a news organization, right? They have cut half of their newsroom, and so has MediaCorp. There are fewer and fewer journalists out there. So if you cannot get journalists to cover what you want them to cover, right, then you make your own news. Remember what we were talking about with regards to what Kumaran was saying just now, right? There are avenues like, for example, Facebook, there are social media and all that. So, for example, if you are going to launch a new product, and our clients, I've got a new product to launch, right? Can you get a journalist to cover that? And we tell them that, it's highly unlikely given the climate that we are facing. So what do you do then? You tell people on your own Facebook, the channels and platforms that you own, the assets that you own, do not rely on journalists because they simply do not have the time nor the resources to cover your product launch, because it's not going to be life-changing. Unless you find the cure for COVID-19, right, then yes, go ahead. And then you'll find that the journalists will be interested. However, if it's going to be a product launch or a service launch, then you can't rely on journalists to give you media coverage. Yeah.
So essentially, you become your own news channel, right?
Absolutely.
And you have to start building your resources and your base from that.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Things like Facebook and LinkedIn and all make that process a lot easier. You don't need to invest a lot in terms of setting up a platform. You can just piggyback on that, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So my take on that is a lot of news organizations are providing amplification services. So you may have your own Facebook page or LinkedIn account, but it's absolutely necessary for you to reach the millions of, the kind of audience the news organizations have and how to reach them in a fairly cheap way, right? So that's the whole idea. But on the other side of things is journalists today or news organizations today are trying to chase the money. And there's been a huge shift from print to digital, and the rates are much lower. And because the rates are much lower and the business model is based on traffic, that means if you have an article that's gone viral, you make more money. If you have a dull and boring article, or if you are launching a product that nobody wants to read about, no publisher is going to pick it up. And that's the real problem. So some of the news organizations, I think Straits Times is doing sponsored stories. Some of the other organizations are also doing sponsored stories. So that's the way to go, right? So you might have to sponsor your article so that you can get the right number of eyeballs on it. Otherwise, there is no traction.
So next week we have something on the music industry. We've got Loretta Elabons of LAMC Productions and Ramli Sarik, the frontman of Sweet Charity, who's now well known in the region. They'll be chatting about what they've been doing, not being able to have their big concerts and to meet people and perform. So it'll be a totally different sort of discussion. And if you guys want to be in on that, just join us next Wednesday at this time. But thanks again for everything, for your time. Have a great day and stay safe.